All right, we're live. All right, excellent. All right, welcome everybody. At this time, we will recall to order the meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. Let the record reflect all board members are present with the exception of Mr. Paul Shapiro. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. 1.07 minutes of the regular meeting of August 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion? Ms. Dickman, second. Mr. Donnelly. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay. 1.08 Superintendent comments.
Thank you very much. As I've been saying at the last couple of summer board meetings, happy summer and happy still summer. Although we are just about 2 weeks away from the beginning of school, and nothing signifies the start of the school year in a better way than when student athletes come back to campus to begin practice and begin to scrimmage. And that was a great sight to see on Monday when we welcomed back our coaches and our student athletes. So we are getting close. It's been a wonderful summer. We have been very busy here in Hilburn and in each of our buildings, working on our facilities to make classrooms ready for our students, to implement new programming, exciting new courses that our students are going to encounter, and ramping up the services that we provide for our students. So we really have a lot to look forward to this upcoming school year. Today really was another milestone in the summer for us. We had our entire administrative team participate in our summer retreat. It was an all-day experience where we're really focused on what our new district priorities and goals will be for the upcoming school year, and I look forward to sharing that with the public in the weeks to come. But in the meantime, I hope that even though we're all busy getting ready to welcome all of our students back in, I hope that everybody still has a couple of moments here and there to still relax and enjoy the summer. This concludes my superintendent's report.
Oh, thank you. 1.09, public participation. This is public participation on action items only. If there are any speakers who would like to address any of the action items on tonight's agenda, you can approach the podium. Seeing as there are none, we will close this portion of the meeting and move to our action items for tonight. So at this time, I will call for a consent agenda for action items 2.01 through 2.17. Are there any items that anybody wishes to pull from the consent agenda at this time? Oh. You know what?
I can comment on that.
2.18.
There were additional agenda items that were posted this afternoon, Mr. Montone, for the professional personnel report. There was an individual who was appointed, as well as 2.18 is the item that was added.
I was just working off an outdated copy. Yes, correct. Thank you, Dr. Dickman, for pointing that out. So it's, are there any items for a consent agenda from 2.01 through 2.08 that anybody wishes to pull? I'm going to start over. So our action items tonight are 2.01 through 2.18. Are there any items that anybody wishes to pull from a consent agenda at this time? No? Okay. So, do I have a motion for a consent agenda? Mr. Donnelly, second. Mrs. Hodge. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay. 4.01, this is our concept report on the on the experience for Suffern Central Elementary Schools, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gunderson.
Thank you very much. I don't think I've presented from this vantage point before. This is a little bit out of the ordinary for me, but I feel like since I'm presenting a more of a full report to the board, I should do it from this podium. I'd like to thank the Board of Education for this opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you this evening to give you an update with regards to how the Suffern Central School District expects to enhance the educational experience for our Suffern Central Elementary School students. This has been a conversation that has taken place for many years with regards to what our elementary school structure should look like. But really, it's been picked up in earnest this past year when we engaged with the DM Group, a consulting firm that came in to give us a really comprehensive overlook about what our points of pride are, our successes are, what our demographics look like, and what the trends appear to be with regards to the attitudes and opinions that people have of the Suffern Central School District. I've also had the opportunity to share feedback opportunities, whether it's through online thought exchanges or surveys with the public, including parents, staff members, and community members. We've had our public group as well, Mounting Minds, engage with district administration about what the elementary school structure should look like. And most recently, after presenting this concept of what the elementary school experience should look like for Suffern Central School District students, we had a few community forums as well where members of the public were able to come in and engage in a little bit more of a dialogue with me as it pertained to this concept. So I'm happy to come here before you this evening to share with you an update and to get a little bit closer as to what this concept would look like. So let me start off by reiterating what the rationale is for restructuring our elementary schools at Suffern Central School District. So essentially, we are committed as a school district to ensuring that all of our elementary school students deserve, regardless of what elementary school they happen to be in, they deserve similar programs. They deserve similar class sizes. They deserve similar extracurricular opportunities. Similar sizes with regards to their social networks. And what I mean by social networks is essentially the number of students that might be in the same grade level, new friends that they can make, and those opportunities. They deserve similar opportunities for support services within their own school building where they attend school. And so really now what we've seen is as our public school enrollment decreases throughout the district, with more and more families moving into our district, many of whom are opting to send their children to religious schools, particularly yeshivas within the area, we have a decreasing enrollment. And in fact, 3 of our elementary schools have enrollment of under 300 students. Those are particularly small buildings. And really, that current model, if we continue to move forward with it year after year, is truly not sustainable, but more importantly, is really not in the best interest with regards to the educational opportunities that we expect to provide for our Suffern Central Elementary School students. Many of you have seen this, this graphic, the one that's off to the left. I presented this with one of my previous conversations with the board, and I've also spoken about it in a variety of community forums with the public as well. And that's essentially the decrease in enrollment, public school enrollment within the Suffern Central School District. So over the course of the time span that's on the board, overall, our district has realized a 12% decrease in public school student enrollment. But that doesn't tell you the whole story. The real eye-opening piece to that is the majority of that decrease in enrollment is found in the elementary school levels, where we've seen a total of a 23% decrease in enrollment. And the DM group engaged in a lot of research and showed us that year over year, as the grade levels increase throughout Suffern Central, more students come into our school district than leave. So as the grade levels get up to the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, families move into the district to take advantage of the middle schools. And then certainly in the high school years, families are moving in as well. More families move in than move out. And so that's why you see predominantly a decrease in the elementary school enrollment. Really a fascinating statistic. The other piece of it really centers on where our decrease in enrollment is realized. And particularly, we've seen 62% of that total enrollment decline is across the catchment zones for Cherry Hill and Viola. That's really where we see more and more families that are moving into those catchment zones are opting to send their children to the religious schools and not the public schools. One of the bright spots in the DM group's findings was that overwhelmingly parent feedback to the DM group was that they're very satisfied with the education that their children are getting in the Suffern Central School Districts, Suffern Central Schools. And they vouch for how effective that experience is. It really comes down to, in many cases, a religious decision by some families not to send their children to the public schools. So let's break it down a little bit and let's talk about school enrollment. And this is in particular, general education enrollment from last year. So right now we still have some students and families that are registering for school for the upcoming school year. And I'll have these numbers updated for the 23-24 school year in the coming weeks, probably for the next time I present to the board. But let's take the hard numbers from last year's school enrollment. Sloatsburg Elementary has 219 general education students. If we break it down a little bit and you take a look at how drastically different some of these grade sizes are at Sloatsburg Elementary. Last year's kindergarten class had 26 students, 2 sections. 26 students is a little bit too large to have one class of kindergarten, so we maintained that pattern of having 2 classes. But there are only 13 students in each of those kindergarten classes. Those are really small classes, not efficient from a financial standpoint, and really not a great environment, not an ideal environment for students either. As those students move into first grade, second grade, and onward, if things stay the way they are right now in the district, there are really not going to be too many new opportunities for friendships for those students that are in that grade level. Now, I use Sloatsburg as an example because it is the smallest school, but you can see how the grade sizes swing dramatically. Last year's 4th grade class had 49 students in it. Again, 2 sections. But instead of having only 13 students in each class like we had in kindergarten, we're talking about 24, 25 students in each class for the 4th grade. Those are really big elementary school classrooms. And some folks would say that was deserving of a 3rd section. If we opened up a 3rd section, that certainly costs taxpayers more money, and many would argue that that's not efficient. Sloatsburg is seeing dramatic increases and decreases in their class sizes because, in part, of how small they are. And you can see last year's graduating class, those 5th graders graduated with only 32 students in the grade. So think about over the span of 6 years, just from a social standpoint, those students didn't have too many opportunities for additional friendships to be made over that span of 6 years. So let's jump over to Cherry Lane. Cherry Lane is our 2nd smallest school with 223 students in it. One of our largest school buildings, but smallest school enrollment, or one of the smaller school enrollments. Viola, 280 students. Montebello, 314. And RP Connor with a rather robust 402 students at RP Connor. But even at RP Connor, we're seeing there that last year's 3rd grade class had 83 students in it. But that's the last class, that's the last grade level at RP Connor, and it's the only school throughout the entire district that has 4 sections of 3rd grade last year. Every year after that is going to be smaller, and you can see there that the grade below, 55 students with 3 sections. So even at the largest, most robustly populated school, the enrollment is declining. So we wanted to take a look at the possible options here. So there are a variety of options. We can maintain the status quo. Suffern Central is fortunate enough to be in a financial situation right now where next year we could just maintain that status quo. We don't have to change things right now. However, I would argue that in 3-4 years, every year that progresses, we are going to get closer and closer to being in a financial bind because this truly is not an efficient model to have 3 elementary schools with fewer than 300 students. You can only imagine. You need a principal in each building. You need a nurse in each building. You need custodial staff in each building. Of course, you need teachers, but it's those positions, when you look at the number of students that some of those positions serve, it really questions the efficiency of the model. So we certainly can maintain the status quo, but not for too much longer. This is the right time to be engaged in this discussion because we're not in financial dire straits. There's no sense of immediacy. We're not in a crisis mode. And so why not look to improve that educational experience for students while we have the flexibility, while we have the financial means to do so in a purposeful way? The second, option B there, repurpose the smallest or even the second smallest school and divide the students into the remaining schools. That's been a question that I've been asked at the community forums. Hey, why not just close the small school? The small school is Sloatsburg. So if you were to go ahead and close or repurpose Sloatsburg Elementary, you would have to send all of the Sloatsburg students into the main section, if you will, of the Suffern Central School District. The closest buildings for Sloatsburg are RP Connor, which can't house 200 additional students, and Montebello, which is our second most populated school, which can't house all of the students. Certainly, we could split them up, but even if we split them up between RP Connor and Montebello, there wouldn't be enough room for the students. We could send all the Sloatsburg students to Viola or to Cherry Lane, but you're talking about sending 200 students as far as possible within the district, which really doesn't make sense. And as you see, when we talk about option C in a few minutes, you'll see that there are many benefits to moving forward with a modified Princeton plan that wouldn't be realized in scenario B. The second smallest school would be Cherry Lane. Again, we could go ahead and repurpose the Cherry Lane building and send all those students to Viola, although that would be a very crowded school. So you would probably have to split up the Cherry Lane students to either send some of them to Montebello or RP Connor, while you're also sending some to Viola. But that doesn't take care of the fact that Sloatsburg still remains extremely small with those extreme grade size differences that we saw a few minutes ago. It doesn't solve the problem of what's lacking in Sloatsburg, and that's a more robust population of students. So really, we've zoned in, or zeroed in on this modified Princeton model, also called modified grade banding, where you band together grade levels of students. And that would result in 2 K through 2 school buildings, and then 2 partnering grade 3 through 5 buildings. The scenario would look something like this, without mentioning school building names right now. We'll get into that and the possible scenarios in a few minutes. But we take this partnering of school concept together, the modified Princeton plan. You take school A. School A would be a K2 school. It would be about 345 students in that school, which would mean each grade level would have approximately 115 students in it, which makes sense for having 6 sections of that grade level. So now you'd have a team of 6 teachers at any particular grade level. You'd have a real sense of a grade level team, or even you could argue 2 teams with that many teachers in it. You'd also have a more robust opportunity for students to make new friends. You could arguably say that a student going through 6 years of elementary school could really forge new friendships when they have 114 other classmates in that same grade level. Look at that as compared to what was taking place at Sloatsburg, and to a lesser extent, the other elementary schools. Its sister school, School B, would be grades 3 through 5. So the students graduating from 2nd grade would all move together into grade 3 at School B. Based on our population right now, that school size would be about 370 students. You can see the number of students on average per grade, which would result in about 7 sections. Again, a robust class size. You'd have a second pairing of schools, School 1 and School 2, same type of model, where students graduating in grade 2 would move to grade 3 from School 1 to School 2, and they would all be together throughout the course of those 6 years. And then, when students graduate from grade 5, they all together go to the middle school, and you'd be talking about a sixth grade class of about 250-ish students coming together in the middle school. And that's when truly all grade 6 students come together at the middle school, like they do right now. Some of our anticipated benefits that I've discussed with a variety of folks, including at the community forum, students would remain throughout that K-5 experience together. So in other words, School A students would attend School B together. School 1 students would all move through and attend School 2 together. So the student friendships throughout that class would remain intact from grades kindergarten through 5th grade. There was some concern that there might be a reshuffling of students between grades 2 and grades 3, and that would not be the case under this model. Another big benefit would be greater consistency of programming. If we want to implement a new instructional program at any of the grade levels, right now we have to implement that program in 5 different elementary schools. It involves 5 different principals, 5 different teams of teachers, and replicate professional development time and time again. In this case, we would be able to roll out a more consistent level of programming because we'd be interacting with 2 principals at any particular grade level and 2 buildings for that grade, that specific grade. We would have more consistent class sizes. Instead of the drastic fluctuation from 13 to 25 students in a particular class, it would be somewhere in the ballpark of hopefully between 18 and 21 students per class. A much more reasonable, more efficient, and more robust classroom experience for students. We'd be able to have age-appropriate activities. Your primary elementary school will be able to focus on age-appropriate primary activities for students, whereas your grade 3 through 5 schools, the intermediate level, would be able to tweak their experiences, their programs, their speakers, their assemblies to that more age-specific range. We'd also have libraries that were more focused on those grade levels. Our STEM labs could be configured, again, to address the needs of those age groups. And then even when we get around to the point of having to upgrade playgrounds, they would be more age appropriate for the students that attend that school. We also look at the ability for after-school programs to be a true option if we move forward with the modified Princeton plan. Right now, for the last few years, we've been extremely fortunate to have an after-school program. But those after-school programs for students in grades 3 through 5, they've taken place at all 5 elementary schools, but they've been fully funded by COVID funding. That hasn't come out of the budget for the Suffern Central School District. This is the first year where if we were able to run the after-school program, it has to come out of our school budget. That's a big financial burden for the school district to fund 5 after-school programs. With this model, we'd be able to fund those after-school programs because it would only be at 2 school buildings, 2 school coordinators, 2 after-school nurses, be a more efficient after-school program, and the transportation would be more efficient as well. But that would also lend itself, if we already have an after-school program in place because it's more efficient, it would lend itself for the opportunity for students to participate in after-school extracurricular activities. You could have a play. You could have a few clubs, and you could have some intramural sport activities for students in grades 3 through 5. Things that are limited in some of our schools because they have hardly enough students to support those types of opportunities. If you notice, for the families whose children go to RP Connor, they have more after-school activities because they have enough students there to support those types of programs. This would allow for that opportunity. We would certainly have fewer split staff members. Right now, we have music teachers that go between buildings. We have speech pathologists that go between buildings. We have a variety of other staff positions that move between buildings, and that the elementary school schedule is very much defined by the availability of those staff members. We would have fewer people split between school buildings, and therefore we would be able to revamp the elementary school schedule. Not talking about the length of the day, but what happens between the start bell and the end bell to really tailor itself well to what the needs are of students. Our special programs will become more universal in nature. Right now, if your child participates in a special program, that student sometimes has to leave their home school and go to another school facility. Now, because of the greater efficiencies and greater consistencies, many of those special programs would become more universal in nature. We might even be able to replicate them in each of the two sister school programs. And then finally, bus transportation would be more age appropriate. The DM group heard commentary from parents who said that sometimes their kindergartner or first grade has a little bit of a difficult time being on a bus with fourth and fifth graders. The interactions that students have together as fourth and fifth graders are very different than what kindergartners and first graders want to experience. So that would certainly be more age appropriate. Some of the challenges, certainly, what would happen to the repurposed school? If we're moving from 5 elementary schools to 4, there's going to be an extra school. Well, I will tell you that the administration of the Suffern Central School District is committed to maintaining that school as a Suffern Central building. We would hope at some point that there would be a need for, because of increased enrollment, public school enrollment, a need to reopen a school. And at some point, a superintendent down the line, perhaps me, and a board of education in the future, perhaps some of these board members, would be looking at the problem of what do we do with an increased enrollment now? Never lose a school building in a public school district in this region. It is simply impossible, and it's impossible to replace. You can't find the property, so we must hold on to that building. I do have to say that I'm encouraged by conversations that I've been having with our educational partners at BOCES, where BOCES has a need for an additional school building. And so we are actively engaged in that type of conversation. As many of you know, BOCES uses space in our existing school facilities right now, and we might be able to expand that partnership to incorporate BOCES into that building. I look forward to updating the board on hopeful progress on that front. Some additional anticipated challenges would be certainly there might be potential transportation cost increases because students would have to travel in some of those grade levels a little bit further to get to those schools. So there would be some potential transportation cost increases and possible increases in transportation time for some students. And of course, also there'd be a one-time moving cost that we would have to take into consideration, as well as all the logistical challenges and maneuvering that we would have to take place throughout the course of this year in order to start this next year. Everything from staff reporting to different buildings to are the same principals that work in the buildings right now going to be the same principals that remain, or will there be some movement? So those are logistical challenges that we have to work through. So let's talk a little bit about the scenarios. So I've had some folks that have come up to me and have said, can you please just tell us which building is going to be repurposed and which buildings are going to be the partnerships? And I don't have a final answer right now, but I have 3 scenarios for the public and the board to take a look at. We're not able to zero in on exactly which of these 3 scenarios is the one that's in the best interest of our students and our district, because we're still looking into the impact that transportation would have on each of these scenarios. We also want to make sure that the various demographic data that we need to analyze allows these partnering schools to be on equal footing. We want to make sure that we don't have one set of schools that have a much larger percentage of free and reduced lunch students or a much larger percentage of Spanish-speaking students. And we want to make sure that the racial differences are on par with one another. That being said, these are the 3 scenarios that we're looking at right now. Having RP Connor become a K-2 building, and those students that attend RP Connor, which would be all the existing K-2 Connor students right now, and the K-2 Cherry Lane students, so the students who live in the Cherry Lane catchment zone would attend RP Connor in grades K-2. Plus, in this case, Viola School would be repurposed. So that would also include some Viola students. So some of the students from the Viola catchment zone would attend the K-2 program at RP Connor School. So all those students that attend the RP Connor School in grades K-2 would then, when they graduate to grade 3, move to Cherry Lane. So all students currently in Cherry Lane in the catchment zone of Cherry Lane right now in grades 3 through 5 would attend Cherry Lane. Students in the R.P. Connor catchment zone who are in grades 3 through 5 would attend Cherry Lane. And those Viola students that I referenced a few minutes ago in grades 3 through 5, some of them would attend Cherry Lane as well. The other set of schools, Sloatsburg, would be a K through 2 building. And eventually, when those students graduated from grade 2 and go to grade 3, they would go to Montebello School. So just as I talked previously about R.P. Connor and Cherry Lane, Sloatsburg students in grades K through 2 would go to Sloatsburg, and students who live in the Montebello catchment zone, who are between the grades of kindergarten and second grade, would be bused to Sloatsburg. And also some of the Viola students. I've had questions about what happens to pre-K. As I've shared with some folks, unfortunately, pre-K students can't be transported on public school buses because they need car seats. So transportation for preschool students would still be required to be provided by their families. But we think we have a viable solution for this. In this particular scenario, Sloatsburg Elementary School would maintain its preschool Y program that it currently has, which would satisfy the families who take advantage of preschool options in the Sloatsburg region. All other preschool students in the main part, if you will, of Suffern Central would have the opportunity to have their child go to the R.P. Connor preschool program. So R.P. Connor would host all the other preschool programs in the district, all the public school preschool programs in the district. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2, tweak things a little bit differently. Although Viola in this scenario is still the school that is repurposed, Sloatsburg would be the K through 2 building, similar to what we just had in the prior scenario. But they would send students, when they graduate from grade 2, they would send students to R.P. Connor. So that would be the partnership there. Sloatsburg and R.P. Connor would be a part of that partnership. And some of the Viola students would attend that pairing of schools. Cherry Lane would be the other K through 2 school. And upon graduation from second grade, all of those students would attend Montebello. And again, the other portion of Viola students would attend that partnership. In this case, Sloatsburg is still able to maintain that Y pre-K program. And in this case, Cherry Lane would host the Suffern Central preschool program. That's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3 is Cherry Lane being repurposed. Again, Sloatsburg would be the K2 school. R.P. Connor would be the partnering school there in grades 3 through 5. And then Viola would be the K2 building, sending students when they get to grades 3 through 5 to Montebello. In this case, Cherry Lane students would be split. And some Cherry Lane students would attend the Sloatsburg R.P. Connor combination, and some Cherry Lane students would attend the Viola Montebello combination. Once again, Sloatsburg would maintain the Y program, and Viola, in this case, would house the district-wide pre-K programs. These are the 3 scenarios we are looking at. This is after a tremendous amount of thought and consideration, where you heard initially in the presentation, earlier on in the presentation, I talked about why repurposing Sloatsburg Elementary School does not make sense for the district. I did not get into detail about why repurposing Montebello and R.P. Connor doesn't make sense, but it really doesn't, as those are the 2 buildings that have the most robust population right now. It does not make sense to repurpose those particular buildings. And that's why we've come up with these 3 different scenarios. We certainly have more work to do, but I felt that I needed to share the progress that we're making, narrowing down our selections to the Board of Education, and to also share that with the public. My hope is that in the weeks to come, I'll be asked by the board to come back and provide additional updates, or perhaps narrow down the recommendation from the administration as to which 1 or 2 scenarios we should really consider, as I know that folks throughout this community are anxious to find out what the final decision is so that we can begin to plan and adjust for next year. That being said, I recognize that this is a presentation to the Board of Education. The community has had 3 different community forums to ask me a whole variety of questions and to provide some commentary and feedback. But I'd ask the board, if you have any particular questions, I'm able to address that now. And I can also come back at a future date to provide additional updates as necessary.
Okay. I'll just start by saying thank you for the presentation tonight, for providing this detail to the board, for providing the detail to the community, because like you said, I know there's a lot of anxiety, and I think the more information that we can put out on our status and administration status is only going to make this easier for people, and it'll put us in a better position to get input as well. So are there any questions, first and foremost, are there any questions from board members specifically for Dr. Gunderson on this presentation?
Dr. Gunderson, you may not be able to answer this, but I just wanted to give a general question. You know, in terms of transportation, what's the general perspective in terms of better efficiency, less efficiency? I know you can't get into very much detail because we don't have a lot of the details with the specific schools, but one of my concerns potentially is transportation and, you know, having kindergartners, you know, going places for longer distances. But is there a general sense that it would be more efficient or more beneficial?
I wouldn't say necessarily that there'll be tremendously greater efficiencies with this this transportation model. There will certainly be greater efficiencies from operating the school building. We've talked about enhancing student experiences within the buildings, but we know that if you're an individual who lives in the RP Connor catchment zone, your child has a very short transportation distance, busing distance to get to RP Connor. And certainly while the student is attending school at RP Connor, I would imagine that that transportation time would be very similar to what it is now. But if the partnering school is Sloatsburg, those students who live in the RP Connor catchment zone, when they have to attend Sloatsburg, are certainly going to have a longer transportation time. And we know that school to school, from going from RP Connor to Sloatsburg, is a time span of about 13 to 15 minutes. And we all know that things can happen on the road, and it can be a little bit longer sometimes as well. We're committed to making sure that those commute times are as short as reasonably possible. But we know that at the very least, that commuting time for a RP Connor student, if they had to go to Sloatsburg School, would be increased by that amount of time. So that is a necessary reality that we have to face, that there will be, in that particular scenario, an increase of at least 13 to 15 minutes. Could be a little bit more as well. But that's why we're going to take a look at each of those scenarios to really try to get a better sense of exactly what those transportation times would look like. That is a particular downside to this model. There's no doubt about it.
Questions? In the 3 different scenarios, unless I'm mistaken, and I don't have it in front of me, but the only constants that I saw were Sloatsburg in all 3 scenarios was a K2. Montebello in all 3 scenarios was a 3.5. And I believe RP Connor was a K2 in one and a 3.5 in the other. Is Sloatsburg as a K2 and Montebello as a 3.5? Is that based on the size of the building, the location of the building, or a combination of both?
That's a great question. So let me address Sloatsburg first. Sloatsburg is our smallest building. Typically, smaller buildings, it's more accommodating for smaller bodies as well, right? But that's really not the main motivation there. The main motivation really comes down to also satisfying the need for pre-K services. So Sloatsburg has a robust program through the Y at Sloatsburg, and it makes sense to keep that going for the convenience of the families in the Sloatsburg region. By keeping a pre-K program in a K2 building, it makes sense also educationally, right? Even though Sloatsburg would have a Y program, it makes sense for that building to be a K through 2 building as well. So a couple things: the size of the building, the facilities are a little bit more conducive to the primary grade levels, and the fact that there's a Y program there really makes a lot of sense, especially since we can't transport preschool age students. There's really a major convenience there for Sloatsburg families. Taking a look at the Montebello example, just the sheer fact that Montebello is right next to the middle school and Montebello share facilities, and Montebello as a facility is better suited for the intermediate elementary grade levels. And that's why we selected to have Montebello really be a consistent grade 3 through 5 option as well.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, it's August 22nd. Our next board meeting is the day before the first day of school. And if administration and if this board wants to move forward with these plans, we will have to make a final decision and vote on this no later than probably mid-October. So I would ask my fellow board members if we feel this is something that we would like administration to keep working on. I know that I would. I believe in what is being presented. I stand behind administration on this. I think that the positives that are shown in these proposed models only benefit our students. And I would reiterate what Dr. Gunderson said, which is none of these decisions are being made because of financial issues. Every one of these decisions is being made because we find ourselves in a unique opportunity right now to make positive changes for our students. So do we as a board feel that we want to look into this and let administration keep going down this road? Yes. No, no, but we need to give a little direction. So just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, or at least a majority of us, so that administration knows that this is the direction we want to keep working in.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay. No, it's not an official vote.
Not an official vote.
No. This is a polling.
But I do have, Matt, I do have a sense, with just open conversation here, that parents are anxious to get this ball rolling, to make a determination of the building. This is the things that we need to get done, I think, ASAP. And I know it's a lot of work here that has to still go into the figuring, but this is the feedback that I've gotten, like who, what, let's go from here. So I think that's important, that we can determine the building and kick it off.
So if I can just address that comment, I want to come to a final resolution sooner than later as well. And as I've told folks in the community forum and this board, I believe this has been a very transparent process. We've been upfront with our community in sharing that this has been our thought. This is how we're progressing through this. And there's been a little bit of frustration that I've heard from people who have said, well, you make the decision already. You know what the decision is. The answer is no. I don't know what the final decision is going to be. And that's because we have kept the public and the board informed throughout this process as how we've been going about gathering the data and what our thought process is here. There are a lot of factors that need to be taken into consideration, and I want to make sure that when I make a suggestion or a recommendation to the board about a final scenario, it checks the boxes for all the things that I had talked about before, right? Minimizing the transportation cost and impact on students that have to be transported, ensuring that the right types of facilities match the age levels of the students, making sure that the data with regards to demographics aren't slanted in one direction or another. We need to make sure that we're rolling this out. And when we make that decision as to what the pairing is going to be, and I put that up for a board approval, I want to be confident that I'm not going to be coming back 2-3 months later saying there's a better model. So I want to be confident that I'm giving you the best scenario. And that's why this is taking a little bit of time. I recognize from the administrative timeline that we have to have a decision in place by the end of October. We could have a decision before that, but we have to have a decision by the end of October because that's when we need to be going ahead and discussing staffing positions. I use the example of which principals are going to be responsible for which buildings. Where do staff members prefer to be? And where will they be, right? We'd like to take their voice and opinions into consideration. We need to make all those decisions so that by January, the beginning of January, we can tell staff which buildings they're going to be in so that they can mentally prepare. And we need to tell parents in those catchment zones for especially the repurposed building, which pairing of schools your children are going to be going to school in. So that way we can make sure that transportation routes are moving forward appropriately, and so that we can make the beginning of the September 2024 school year as smooth as possible. So we have a lot of work to do with regards to logistics before we get to next September, and the sooner we can make a final decision, the correct final decision, the better we are.
And just one other thing, Dr. Gunnison, was my concern, and I know you've addressed it. We're not looking for layoffs or anything, that everybody's going to have a position. And that's really one of my concerns.
We're looking at long-term efficiency in the district. And we also know that there are a significant number of staff members that are planning to retire in the next year to 4 years. And we expect to realize some of those efficiencies through attrition.
Right.
That's the goal of the school district.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Dr. Gunnison, thank you again for the presentation. Thank you to all the administrators and all the staff that helped gather this information and help put it together. And, we look forward to the next update. Okay, 6.01 is board member comments. Are there any board member comments at this time?
I have in my notes. So this is really a message for our Suffern Central daughters, really all the daughters, but particularly those at Suffern Middle School in particular. I just want to let you all know that I have been working carefully, communicating with the administration and the policy committee regarding the dress code to ensure that you all feel confident, comfortable, and safe at school. I've shared articles and resources to support my position, and I want to let you know that I'm going to continue to try until appropriate adjustments are made for you. I promise that. Perhaps more importantly, I'm also attempting to address the ways in which the code is enforced, so no one feels shamed or embarrassed or humiliated in the hallways in front of your peers. you deserve better, and this is something that I plan to continue to work on. I want to be perfectly clear. This does not mean that I'm committing in any way that this is going to happen. I am a one-woman army right now, but the commitment is that I will continue to discuss it and bring it up and communicate my position. And I also want to let everybody know that I have also been working to improve communication with families. Too often, we're left to wonder about when and where our students need to be dropped off or picked up, what they need to bring, what they need to wear, if spectators are welcome at events, and if so, the start and end times of those events, associated transportation, optional participation outside of the school day, non-PTA fundraisers, nominal fees, like those times when your kid comes to you at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and says, like, hey, I need that $8 for that thing I never told you about. So again, it's not a commitment that there will be a change, but a commitment that I am going to continue to work on this for you. Thus concludes my board member comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good. Okay. 7.01, public participation. This is public participation on any district-related business. If a member of the public would like to speak on any district-related matters, you can approach the podium at this time. Okay. Well, seeing as there are none, we will close this portion of the meeting. So 8.01, Superintendent closing comments.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make sure that I thank all the administrators and members of the public that have taken played a role in developing and refining the plan for how we enhance our elementary school educational experience for our students. So I want to thank all of you that are in the audience and those of you around the table, administrative team, staff members throughout the district. We are doing this together, and I appreciate your partnership in all of this. And then to Ms. Hodges' comments, I appreciate what you shared right there, and know that the administrative team is committed to working on those topics as well. That your concerns are not unfounded by any means, and just like with so many things in public education, we can always do better, and we're committed to doing that. So thank you for your thoughtful comments on that. And thus concludes my superintendent reports. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Dr. Gunderson, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 5th. That is the day before the first day of school. So the next time we meet, we'll all be getting ready to go back, and I don't know. So summer's over already. It's just that it happens just too fast. At this time, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion? Is that Mr. Frazier? Second? Ms. Dickman? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we will see you in 2 weeks.